Before we go any further, if you value serious, research-driven history like this, subscribe to the channel now. This channel exists for people who care about how things actually worked, not watered-down stories. What you're about to hear is drawn from declassified escape reports, post-war interrogations, and first-hand accounts. These are not myths. These are techniques that kept American airmen alive inside Nazi Germany, and, well, many of them still matter today. Why these escape methods mattered more than weapons ever could. When US bombers went down over Germany, the fight didn't end at impact. Survival shifted from firepower to discipline, patience, and psychology. Airmen trained under the escape-and-evasion programs of the United States Army Air Forces knew that escaping wasn't about heroics. It was about not being noticed, not being remembered, and not leaving patterns behind. Every trick you're about to hear reflects that mindset, and, honestly, every one of them can still be adapted to modern wilderness or hostile environment survival. Dressing to disappear was actually more important than moving fast. One of the first things escaped airmen did after bailing out was to get rid of anything that screamed American. Flight jackets, parachute silk, even those distinctive boots were all liabilities, you see. Many airmen swapped clothing with farm workers, scavenged from laundry lines, or even deliberately dirtied themselves just to match local labourers. The lesson here is visual blending, not, disguise. Today, if you're moving through unfamiliar terrain, the principle really does remain the same. Avoid clean, high-contrast gear. Muted colours, worn textures, and ordinary silhouettes reduce attention far more effectively than camouflage patterns meant for combat. Paper was power, and forged documents bought time. German internal travel relied heavily on paperwork, and escaped airmen learned quickly that the right document could move them farther than stealth alone. Forged Arbeitsausweise and travel passes often came from resistance networks, or were crudely fabricated to survive only brief inspection. The key was plausibility, not perfection. Airmen memorized details on their papers so hesitation wouldn't expose them. In modern survival terms, this translates to documentation awareness. Knowing what credentials matter in a given environment and how they're checked is often more important than avoiding people altogether. Silent navigation relied on railways, rivers, and industrial scars. Airmen escaping across Germany avoided maps whenever possible, since carrying one could be a death sentence. Instead, they memorized linear features like rail lines, canals, and factory zones. These features guided movement without obvious navigation aids. Railways in particular acted as silent highways, allowing night movement parallel to known routes without entering towns. Today, this skill directly applies to wilderness survival. Rivers, ridgelines, and power corridors serve the same purpose. Learn to move by features that don't require constant reference checks or visible tools. Hunger management was calculated, not desperate. Escaped airmen did not eat whenever food appeared. They rationed carefully, often choosing hunger over theft that might alert civilians or authorities. When they did eat, they favoured foods that left no trace and required no cooking. Raw vegetables, breads and milk were preferred because smoke and firelight were giveaways. Modern survivalists often underestimate this lesson. Fire is not always your friend. Cold food, eaten discreetly, may keep you alive longer than a hot meal that announces your presence. Interrogation resistance began before capture ever happened. Many airmen were eventually caught, but escape training emphasized resistance long before that moment. They rehearsed cover stories tied to their forged identities and practiced answering questions casually rather than defensively. The goal was to appear boring, not defiant. German security forces, including the Gestapo, were trained to look for emotional tells. Calm consistency mattered more than bravado. Today, whether dealing with authorities, border officials, or hostile groups, this same principle applies. Emotional control and narrative discipline reduce suspicion more effectively than silence or confrontation. Underground networks succeeded because airmen followed rules. Escape lines only worked when airmen obeyed instructions without improvisation. Resistance groups moved them in stages, limiting what each helper knew. Airmen who tried to move faster or independently often compromised entire networks. The survival lesson here is counterintuitive. Sometimes the safest choice is surrendering control to a system that understands the terrain better than you do. In modern expeditions or crisis evacuations, following local expertise often prevents fatal mistakes caused by overconfidence. Psychological endurance, kept men alive longer than physical strength ever could. Perhaps the most overlooked escape tool was, in fact, mental discipline. Airmen learned to accept slow progress, isolation, and uncertainty without forcing decisions. Many hid for weeks, moving only at night and resisting the urge to do something when, honestly, doing nothing was safer. This skill, it's directly transferable to modern survival scenarios. Panic burns calories, clouds judgment, and leads to exposure. Controlled patience, on the other hand, saves lives. Why do these Second World War escape lessons still matter today? These techniques weren't about heroism, not really. They were about systems, restraint, and understanding human behavior. Whether you're studying history, preparing for wilderness survival, or analyzing resistance operations, the core lesson is, quite simply, the same. Survival favors those who think quietly, adapt culturally, and avoid becoming memorable. If this kind of deep, practical history is what you come here for, subscribe now and share this video with someone who actually appreciates the details. This channel is built for serious history buffs and survival-minded thinkers, and, the best way to keep it alive is by supporting it directly.